Welcome to June's segment of Character Strengths 24 and 24. This is the podcast where I take you through the Values in Action Character Strengths survey for my own self because I use it with clients, and this journey throughout 2024 is about going through all 24 of my strengths in the order that they come up for in terms of top strengths down to lesser used strengths. And I basically chat with different people and share with you how that can make sense in our everyday lives and perhaps give you a takeaway as well. So, June is kind of exciting because, as I mentioned last month, I was struggling a little bit to find people the lower down my strengths list I was going, because those were strengths that obviously are not used very often, and therefore they require a lot of intentionality and purposefulness and mindfulness and thinking about where do I use this and how, etc., etc. But that's the whole point of this series, right? To get me to think, to get me to challenge myself, and to mix things up a little bit. But June almost felt a little bit too easy in terms of how I was going to do this. So at the end of May, I took part in the Mukesh Chawla's casting company Just Act workshop, where I met a fantastic group of people from all different walks of life, all different stories, but with a common goal of just wanting to learn how to act. And I thought, what better time now that I've connected with them? It was a fantastic week, and I'm sure we'll tell you stories about it during the interview segment of this episode. And I thought, what better time to bring them in than this month's two strengths, which is going to be social intelligence and teamwork. Literally, the two of those were almost like the bread and butter for me in that week. And it was a pretty intensive week. We met Monday to Sunday for a whole week, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. after a long day at work in central London. So there was a fair bit of traveling for me as well. And for many others, actually, quite a few people came from Leicester, Birmingham every day. So, the dedication is real. So let's talk a little bit about, for this episode, social intelligence. Now you've got the context of who I'm going to be inviting on. We'll introduce ourselves to individual people. Almost feels like an actors roundtable, which I'm hoping is a form of manifestation for us all. Because you know what? Why not? Part of my vision boarding goal for this year, for those of you who have checked out that podcast, that video and that playlist, is about being bold, being delulu, right? Anywho, so social intelligence. Where do we use it? What have you heard of it? What do you think it is? I always thought that social intelligence was about being able to read the room. And I think that's true still. But what I recognize now is when I was younger, social intelligence for me was a lot about being able to hold and command a room in a way that makes people feel comfortable. But I feel now that I look back, a lot of that probably came from my own ego to be the hostess with the mostest, for example, and to make sure that people were receiving a level of care that I wanted to give, not that the level of care that they necessarily needed to receive. So, for example, now I look back on it, part of me might think, it was always my duty to make sure that everyone in the room was well looked after and they're all okay and they're well fed and watered and so on. But that probably comes from a place of ego, in that I want to make sure that I'm doing my bit. The more I've done my coaching practice and worked with different clients, I recognize that actually it's really more equally important to be able to meet a person where they're at. For example, me coming in with my, stash of tray of snacks and things are probably quite overstimulating for some people. And maybe they just need the space to relax and kind of be a wallflower, and that's okay. So that's something I've learned along the way. Now, according to the VIA Character Strength Survey, social intelligence is about knowing what makes other people tick. And there's two elements to it. You've got social awareness and social facility. Now, social awareness is, as it says on the tin, just being aware and acknowledging what is making people tick, what are their motives, what are their feelings, what are they displaying, and then social facility is being able to do something with that or reacting accordingly. Now, what better important what better group of people to bring in than a bunch of actors to display how social intelligence might work both in their personal life and in their professional lives. I'm going to try to ask questions not just about their acting profession, but also any other professions that they have. And generally, I want to know where social intelligence may have served them and how we can get better at it. In fact, my burning question is, when we were all practicing improv theatre, fair enough, it was like the first time we'd met each other and there was awkwardness and just a kind of an expectation to just get on with it and do it. But how do you stop yourself from talking over one another and overshadowing each other on the stage when you're doing improv? Let's go find out.
Awesome. I'm joined with the wonderful Gurshan and Ashish, who I met last week on the introduction that I just spoke to you about at this Mukesh Chavra's casting company's Just Act workshop. So we're going to do some quick introductions and then get cracking on with our deep dive into social intelligence. Let's start with Ashish. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? And have you come across the survey before?
I'll take the easy question first. No, I did not come across the survey before you sent it across to me. About myself, I work in the IT consultancy area. I've been working there for more than um, 15 years now. Started pretty with a very technical role and then got on to the business side of it. So that's when the people dealing skills come handy. Um, so yeah, and then I started my career in India, moved across to UK as well during that time. So it was interesting to meet people from different backgrounds throughout the different jobs I've done over the years.
Nice. Okay, and we're going to come back to the thing that binds us all together, acting, in a short while. But before we do that, let's go over to Gurshan. Hello.
Hello. So yeah, I'm Gershan. I was also part of this acting workshop, duh. And I have just finished my studies at UCL. I did IT and management. The official name was Information Management for Business, but for short, it's called IT and Management. And yeah, I am from India as well. Was born there, raised there for 16 years, then moved to the UK with my family to Wales and then to London. And yeah, I really enjoy acting. I don't have, although I don't have much experience, but over the past week, we all did really enjoy. I started doing stand-up comedy as well for the past half a year now. So that's taken a lot of my mind now, where I'm just looking at comedy in every little thing in my life. And now I don't know what I'm doing up next in my life, but yeah.
Well, I love that because we're all coming from very different backgrounds, and I think it would be curious to see, like at the end of these 45 minutes or so, what can we learn from each other and maybe take away a new kind of method of using it. Now, Ashish has done the survey, and Gulshan is yet to do the survey, and we're going to try and see if we can persuade Gulshan to spend some time doing it, maybe about 10, 15 minutes.
I'm
But
50% there.
oh, you're doing it as we're talking about. Okay,
Yeah.
might be slightly biased, but try and be as honest as possible where
Yeah, of
possible.
course, of course. I
Um,
think over the past week, not past week, past month, because I was doing my dissertation and I was doing other people's dissertation surveys as well. Call me like a survey master because I can read questions and answer like this now.
Nice. I really thought you were going to say I was doing other people's dissertations, and I was like,
Dissertation.
wow, hoping that you were charging for that. So that's exciting. We're going to find out where social intelligence ranks for the both of them. But before I continue, I think it's really crucial that as we're going through this episode, I definitely want to hear about Ashish, your journey from working with different people, and also your journey into acting. Gulshan, I definitely want to hear as well the same thing, especially now because you're in this transition mode between graduating and getting a job, you're traveling. But for the both of you as well, I think one thing that I don't have experience of, which I want to know more about, is the migrant experience. So obviously, you guys have both navigated different cultures, different people of different walks of life, language barriers as well. And I think social intelligence is really crucially going to be quite relevant in all of those things. So, what does social intelligence mean for either of you guys? Jump in wherever.
I think for me, it would be how well you can get into different social scenarios and understand and reciprocate to people about what uh, what kind of mood is or how you're talking to them in different ways. So just understanding the mood of a social gathering and just getting along with it.
Okay, nice, Gulshan.
Pretty similar, but yeah, basically just an understanding of a given social scenario you put in and how well you're actually able to comprehend with it, given the situation. Do you remain the same? Do you change yourself? I think that's like my image of social intelligence.
Okay, nice. Both very similar, and both actually very similar to what the survey creators kind of defined as the universal definition of social intelligence, and that is very much about how we fit into a room full of people, how we navigate their motives, their experiences. But there's two other elements to it, which is, and I think we all took away this learning from last week's workshop, which is social intelligence is not just about observation and being socially aware, but it's also about social facility, what you do with it, which is quite crucial to being socially intelligent. And also just off the record, it sounds like a bit of an interview, but feel free to ask each other questions as well, because I want you to be able to learn and take stuff away from myself and from each other as well. So informal conversation, we'll treat it like that. Let's go over to your survey, Ashish, while Gushan's finishing off his. Where did social intelligence rank on yours?
Um, it's one of my middle strengths, I'd say. Actually, yeah, it's so I mean the top ones are creativity. Like the first one I saw is creativity, and I was like, oh, that is good.
Apt.
I like that one.
Very
Um,
appropriate.
yeah, but yeah, social intelligence is one of the, I don't know, they're ranked. Is the number against it is the ranking, or
Yeah,
it's
that's the
just,
one.
so it's
Yeah.
12th. So it's 12th on
Okay.
my list.
There's 11 for me. We're very similar then. Were there any surprises overall? I mean, we don't have to stick with social intelligence right now. We can just talk about any of the others. Did anything surprise you?
Um, Not really. I mean, I think with respect to social intelligence, yes, I think I've been, because I've the kind of lifestyle I've had, working more with systems, interacting less with people, the social scenarios which I've dealt with are very similar, right? There's an office party, there's like set social events for me. And then suddenly when I ended up in this acting workshop, there were two things. One, a new social setting, and secondly, me not being able to get comfortable with people straight away. I take my time. So that situation where I was in a room with 40 people who I've never met before, and to just start, having that interaction with them was difficult for me to start with. So I would totally, um, I mean, I'm pretty okay with what the rating says for me in terms of social intelligence, because it takes me time, because I think it's a mix of the personality, how I am when I meet new
Mm,
people, and I need to observe. I like observing people more. So I think I have part of social intelligence, like observing and understanding what they're feeling. It's the other one, which you said right now, right? The social facility, what you do with it.
mm,
That bit is where I think I'm still not there yet.
That's quite interesting. So I'll share my experience with that in a little while, but why do you think it is that stops you from being socially facilitative, if that's the right word?
Um, I, I think firstly, from my point of view, it's like if in a social setting there are people who are already trying to connect and trying to do a lot of things, I sort of take the step back because there's just so much happening. I think it just becomes a bit overwhelming for me as well, because I'm not used to such big gatherings and talking to everyone. So even if I'm at a big party, I will talk to all of them, but I think I'll connect with only a few.
Mm,
Um, and I don't think that'll happen during that social gathering. It'll happen after, like, when you actually meet them one on one, and then have some one on one interaction outside that social gathering. That's just me as personality. So I think that is where, in this situation as well, for me, it was like, oh, there's just a lot of happening. Everyone wants to talk. Everyone wants to know what's happening. Anyone wants to say a lot of things. I'm like, okay, let's just be and observe and see what's happening around.
that's quite
Um,
interesting. It's very similar actually to how I generally approach social gathering. Now, anyway, my history has been very different. Interestingly, Mukesh pulled me to one side, I think on day 3 or 4, and he said, "Tu hamesha aloof kyun rehta hai?" And why, no, why you always so aloof? And I was like, I understand English, but I don't understand what aloof means. So what did you mean by that? And he explained like it just feels a bit you're just detached from everyone. Do it kone mein baitha rehta hai, and you just keep what just you don't get involved. And I thought that was quite interesting because for me personally, the amount that I had got involved for me was बहुत काफी है. You know, I've done I've done more than I would have done had no one have challenged me. But for him, he still felt that that was quite aloof or detached, which I thought was very interesting, and I did explore it throughout the rest of the week,
Mm.
and I had to check myself a little bit on it. But we'll come to that in a little while. Kushan, tell us a little bit about your experiences. Have you finished the survey yet?
I have just finished my survey. So
Okay. We
yeah.
get some live emotional reactions towards your results. So, have you opened it up yet?
Yes. So it says my top strength is humor.
Nice. Good to know.
Uh,
With stand-up
uh
comedy.
oh yeah. So my top strengths are humor, gratitude, love, creativity, and fairness.
Nice. And where does social
Then
intelligence fit into these?
how
So
do
if
you
you
do
scroll
that?
down, there should be a part that says send me like free PDF or something like that. Or you
Oh,
can open up a
I'm trying to click access now, and I just don't see anything. That's weird.
it's usually if you scroll and so you don't once you've got your 5 strengths, down the bottom there's a part that says free PDF or email me my results or something like that.
Does it? Wow. Okay.
Do you want to
I don't
share
know
your
what's
screen? Will it
happening
help?
because oh yes, please.
Yeah, go on. I've given you the permission to share your screen and then you can share
Uh, yeah. Uh,
4 of them there. So we managed to get it. If you scroll up, let's find social intelligence.
there we go.
Where are we at? Number 12. Aha. So we're all pretty much the same. Slap bang in the middle with it. 11 and
Yeah.
12. Being
Yeah.
aware of the motives and feelings of others. Wonderful. Okay, so those are all of your strengths. And to be fair, if you guys ever want to chat about other strengths and how you can use them, etc., feel free to reach out anytime. I use it almost every week with one client or another. And I like to do it every 6 months or so because they do change around a little bit the more
Yeah.
you harness them. My challenge is to try and that's one of the reasons why I like the strength survey more than like Myers-Briggs personality test, for example, because I think with those personality tests, people try to box themselves in one thing, while with
Mhm.
strengths, it's let's play around with it. What do I need this like for this particular project I'm working on? Maybe I need to harness more of my creativity, but that's kind of low. Well, how do I manage to do that? And speaking through it with a coach is always quite helpful. So yes, Gulshan, number 12 for social intelligence. How did that plan out for you over the last few weeks or month?
I'd say it was pretty similar for me as well as what Ash just said. Because again, being in a room with 40 complete strangers, the first day, obviously, it was quite intimidating listening to everyone's experiences and acting. I'm like, oh my God, they've like done so much work. Looking at their Instagrams and they have like tens of thousands of followers. Um, but over as the workshop progressed, I realized well we are all literally on the same boat. We're it's like we're starting from ground zero. All your previous acting experience and all your previous drama experience, TV experience doesn't matter because the stuff you're being taught, the stuff you're going through, um, it's just like all the same for everyone. And when we got put in our groups for the short film, for the drama, and it eased up a bit because then it became more because you split a group of 40 into fives and twos and threes, and then you realize that you get to know each person in depth, what they've done, and then you can just use that for the wider group as well. So I'd say from day one till day seven, it was a big difference, and I could see myself from day one. I was just shy, and by the end, when they were giving out certificates and everyone was like, "Yeah," I was like, "Okay, yeah." They know for my dialogue in the film, so I've made it.
Gulshan is under Gulshan is under strict instructions to
Yeah.
not repeat the dialogue because I don't want to lose my client database. Let's just say there's a lot of swearing, and let's just say anyone who was at the workshop knows exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I want to make a statement, and let me just hear your thoughts on it. But my argument is that I feel like social intelligence is a very useful tool to have, and easily exercised when you're with strangers versus when you're with people that you know. And the reason why I say that is, let's say I go to a family wedding, 40 people there easily at an Asian family wedding, right? And that minimum, 40 people that you know of. But there's also 40 lots of biases, 40 lots of stories and histories that you've got with them, and there's an element of your guard is up, or I already know the energy that I'm coming here with. I know who I am. I'm coming with it. While when you're 40 odd in a completely strange setting, being very vulnerable with each other, doing improv theater and becoming animals, for example, you don't have that guard and you don't have any option but to be socially intelligent. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Um, so from my side, I think yes, I totally agree. Like because I travel a lot as well. I like traveling. I love traveling into Europe. And post-COVID, because I've been working from home, I've been just traveling for like 6 weeks, 5 weeks, working from home, wherever it is. So I've traveled across Europe. And I totally agree that with strangers, you can try, you can test your, things which you've never done before. And in that way itself, this workshop also was one of the things I've tried, where I've sort of tried to get out and be uncomfortable. Um, just to be in a situation which I wouldn't be comfortable in, and then see how I react, or then push myself to just be in that zone, and then try to learn from it or just try to do something new. So it does help when you are with strangers, because you can be anyone, because they don't have a notion of who you are
Mm,
yet. So they don't carry any baggage of, oh, this guy's like that guy's like that. um, Compared to when you are in a gathering where people know you and they already have an image of you. Okay, this guy is funny, that guy is serious, whatever it may be. Um, and a lot of it goes to amount of thinking that goes, right? So when you think a lot, when the core memory you have, that creates the bias you were talking about. And that's where it, even if before you say something, you've already been judged, or you have already been put into one box
mm,
before, right? You can be a different person in the next same social gathering, but because you have the image of you have already been with them, it's hard to break out of that at times, because people are very rigid and they just make an image of you and they just put you there.
that got me curious because now I'm thinking we've only just met for a week, but we're thinking about staying connected for the long-term future so we can collaborate with each other and work with each other. And now my fear is, does that mean that we're going to be less socially intelligent with each other the more we get to know each other? Or do we have that core memory of the week forming, that week spent together and we've built a very strong foundation there? Is that the thing that's going to keep us working healthily?
I think it could be either or. It depends on how authentic you were there, because you could see, I don't know, I just sense a few people were there to perform and impress,
Mm,
while few were authentically being themselves, like, and also the way Mukesh conducted the class, he wanted you to be that. Like, he just wanted you to be yourself and just, you know, get easily, you know, get basically just relax and enjoy and do your bit. He wanted to see you rather than you perform something. So in that way, I think uh, you there will be people in both states, where some people will just be themselves no matter how many
mm,
times you meet them, and some people who are not themselves, probably you will end up meeting them again, and then you'll be surprised, like, and then
mm,
on the other side, you will have people who were like, like me. I hardly spoke. I think I hardly spoke in as a when we were talking in a group, I hardly spoke. So I would be that person as well. But when I'm interacting one-on-one with people, I would talk to them. So I'm more
mm.
connected with people one-on-one. So there'll be few changes you'll see. But it you just have to keep an open mind, because you can't know a person in few hours, even if, because you were there for one reason, you were there for acting. You're not trying to just know each other at that point.
Mm.
That was just something which happened during the course.
And speaking of authentic self, Guruji, over to you about I want to know about your being a straight brown male who's also a Taylor Swift fan, and that forms some of your stand-up comedy. How useful is social intelligence when you're like writing your sketches or on stage on an open mic event, for example? Tell us how you navigate that with social intelligence.
It's tough writing a sketch for stand-up comedy, first of all, because um you really need to analyze your audience. And I noticed that during the workshop because that one day where we were told to just like perform anything funny, and I did my stand-up set. That was exactly the stand-up set I performed at in my university's comedy club, and I shared that on like Instagram, YouTube, to WhatsApp, to everyone, and everyone, like all our family, friends, relatives, they're like, "Oh my God, that's so good! It's so nice," but it did not work in the workshop, and I was just and Mukesh ji was just like, "Yeah, boring. Try again." And so it felt like that was the moment when I realized you really need to know the people you're talking to, and you really need to adjust your script, your set, your whatever. I knew that would work in UCL Comedy Club because I know my audience. I performed there since November. So I
Mm.
know how the crowd's like, how they laugh, the fact that I'm a Taylor Swift fan, and I'm just challenging the scary stereotypes of being a straight brown male who doesn't listen to rap but listens to pop music instead. So I knew they would listen to that sense of humor. But when you go up to a workshop full of like Indian people. I don't know how many of them know the fact that that this is the stereotype of a brown male in the
Brown
UK
man.
that they listen to raps. How many of them know the stereotypes of a Taylor Swift fan? So it really does, affect how much you're understanding the situation whilst you're doing a stand-up set or just performing anything in general.
Do you mind if I ask you something? It feels a little bit vulnerable, a bit personal. Are you okay with me asking?
Yeah, go for it.
Feel free to say, sidestep the question if you want
Yeah,
to,
that's fine.
or I'll just cut it out of the recording. But did that experience affect your confidence at all?
Um, mm, it I that's a very interesting thing, but here's the thing. If it was on day two, probably yes, it would have. But the feedback was good job, but it was boring. So instead of looking at it was boring, I focused on the good job and I try to build on that. How can I, expand on that? How can I expand on the good job? And how can I improve the boring? If it was day two, because I think over the 7 days, um, I got a couple negative feedbacks about the performance, which really affected me. So if like on day three, I think day three or day four or something like that. So I saw myself uh just and the outlook I had on the feedback I received just changed over those 7 days. So it didn't really negatively affect me, but now that I think back, if it was like early on in the workshop, because I care so much about receiving a positive feedback, so that would have been totally different if it was on some other day.
Mm. I think there's something to be said for sure about the cultural biases that this situation. I mean, it's a Bollywood-esque acting workshop by one of the biggest Bollywood casting directors, with 40 Desi people who are either hardcore, fresh migrants, who are old school migrants, who are British born, Muslim, Sikh, Hindu, Bengali, Sri Lankan. It was a real melting pot. But interestingly, the only two things that actually it gave us any commonality was one, we're all in London right here, right now, and two, we're all somewhat fans of Bollywood or the Indian film industry in some ways. That you could actually argue that those were the only two features that we had in common.
In
And
common.
despite that being quite a big connection, there was still so much varieties between us because I can imagine, Gulshan, your sketch on being a straight brown male who's into Taylor Swift, it's a very appropriate for a London audience. for a British audience, also for a Gen Z audience. I think age is also a big difference here.
Yeah,
And social intelligence, you're right, it's spot on. But for a older uncle type generation, it's like, does that mean that sketch is not good, or does it just mean that it's just landed in the wrong place? That's, you
wrong
know.
place.
So I think there's something there to be said as well for anyone who perhaps is trying work and it hasn't been so successful, thinking about who are you trying to get to receive it? What's the message and who's it going to? Um, were there any other experiences that you guys had that you thought social intelligence here could go potentially wrong? Or this person might need a bit more social intelligence to read the room, for example. We won't mention names, of course, but just, and it doesn't even have to be about the workshop in general, in your work life or personal lives. I
I
feel like
think I
Gulshan has one, but he's being polite.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it counts as it or not, but it was again during that humor blah 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 day when we all were just put in a group and you just had to come with anything like the most randomest things happening, whatever. And whilst we were all discussing our um, sketches and stuff. I could see in my group, I could overhear in some other groups about how there were some people who were just adamant that no, you're supposed to do my story, just do my story. I think it's funny. Um, and I think it was just, I was like, okay, I don't know. It's just like, it's the fact that are you not being a team player? Or are you not understanding? Are you not open to listen to other people's ideas? I think it was like something like that where I could think that potentially maybe just read the room, read the group, read the brief, what we're supposed to do. I think that's the thing that came in the back of my mind.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, and that was interesting because I think the time pressure, when you add a time pressure to anything, right? I think people just, even if they want to be the most nicest person to you, in that time pressure, they can get really, hard on with like pick like this is what I want to do. You just follow it because we are competing. I don't know. For me at that time there was like, oh, there were two or three people in my group and they were just going on like saying this idea is mine, and then one, two, three ideas, but we did not have enough ideas. I think we had to do like three things, right? Um, and I think one of them was funny enough to do. The second one, we had no idea what we were going to do. And then what happened is when we actually started doing it, we had discussed one thing and we had said this is not good to do. And then the person started that. So we had to just improvise. Or like, oh, this is what they've started. As like, okay, let's do something. So we just had to go and just do it. So yeah, I mean, I think the time pressure, uh, in terms of anything, will add. For some people, it can be a trigger to become very stubborn. It can become a trigger to just crumble and say, no, I can't do anything.
mm.
So it depends on the personalities. But yeah, the time pressure adds a lot of things, um, even to your normal life. Like, if I give you a time limit of one day, like we got it for the short films, it was challenging. It was like, what are we going to do?
That's something that's
Yeah,
quite interesting. Like social intelligence is effective if you have the time.
yeah.
I can imagine like if I'm Gulshan and I'm standing in front of a stage performing like an open mic comedy night and it's a little bit of an improv, I don't have the time to get to know everybody. I'm gonna have to kind of make some fast judgments about
Mm,
who my audience is and or do you know what? Maybe this person I can't make a joke about because I can just see it in their face. They're terrified to be there, for example, or I think there's something there that tells you social intelligence is a luxury if you've got the time for it.
true.
With the
Also,
short films, I found was quite interesting. So we actually, the three of us were in the short film activity together. So for the listeners, context wise, because I think it was like day 2, we were put into these groups and we were given a scenario like divorce, there's been a death in the family. Ours was an affair that's gone wrong, and you were given like 15 minutes. You're gonna have to improv something, get on the stage and perform in front of everyone. So we did it, and it was a bit mediocre. And I remember it was we went first because I was like, you know what, let's
yes,
get. I was the team leader for it. I voted people in, and then he decided to swap them around anyways. And then I was like, yep, let's go for it. Let's just get it over and done with. Because for me, I feel like I had enough. I hear my listeners are going to be like, why are you over explaining yourself? It's done now. I feel like I owe Gushan and Ash an explanation. No, not at all. So one of the reasons why I like to get things done and just go out the way first with is because he's not assessing all of us against each other. He's assessing us as individuals. So if we'd have gone first or if we'd have gone last, the feedback would have been the same. And I felt that that was accurate for I could say that it was accurate for Mukesh because he was pretty much fair throughout and he gave everyone the feedback that they needed and there was relevant ones that were really impressive and and so on. So I don't think us going first made a difference. Someone else on the other hand from our group had interpreted that we should never go first. We should go second or third so that we can use the feedback that he gives to the other two groups and then apply that to our own. And my argument there is, but with what time? We're literally sat here as the audience members. We can't discuss with each other. It's really disrespectful to the ones who are performing. You can't do that.
exactly, exactly.
So it's just a case of, you know what, social intelligence will work to an extent, but who is, I guess, am I asking the question, are there some social intelligence targets that are more important than others? In some ways, I guess all of us were trying to perform to impress Mukesh. And some of us were probably more like, "Well, I just want the feedback, to be honest. I just want to get on with it and go." This was after like 2 days of therapy circles, do you remember?
Yeah. No, I mean, I seriously was there just to observe and learn, right?
Yeah.
So I, I, I wasn't there because I know I had no background. I mean, I hadn't done stuff for years. It's just my interest and in acting is still there after so many years, and I wanted to give it one more chance again. But I knew I'm not there yet to perform and impress, right? So that's out of the question. So what are you there for? From my point of view, it was very clear. I'm there to learn whatever is happening around you, however people are doing it. So I was literally learning from everyone because
Yeah.
everyone was giving me cues on to, this is something you can do, or maybe this is something you can do if this worked for you. So I was learning from everyone. So my agenda was pretty simple, like just keep doing and keep looking, keep observing, and keep learning. It was as simple as that. And I think the group things which happened, or even with the monologues, the way he did the monologues worked out so well because yeah, I mean there were nerves, there were these things like, oh, people are going to watch this and that, and suddenly he makes a stand in like random spaces and just tells you to perform your bit. And that was like, I think it was the best part of to start with. If you want to get anyone, you know, not feel conscious about themselves in a performance, I think that's where you start with, like make them at ease, like nobody's watching, just you to do your bit, and then we'll see what happens later. He was very good at that. So in that respect, I think um, um, you you still have to stop thinking about who you are in front of. It's
Mm.
difficult, um, but I think I've been reading a lot about I don't know if you've heard the name Jiddu Krishnamurti. Um, this is one guy who was in the 90s, like um, a sort of philosopher, guide, but he never made a group or anything. He did not want to be a leader or a guru of someone of some sorts. So he just wrote and spoke to people, just randomly started talking. And I mean, I think one of the books which I really like about, which the people have collated from his talks is Commentaries on Living.
Mm.
And the best part is like where he talks about mind and removing mind from your life equation. You use mind when you need to do something, right? Like, oh, I want to write, a scene or a stand-up comedy scene. I'm using my mind. I'm using picking up things and doing something with it. Um, or, oh, I want to get to Central London. What train am I taking? Which, where your mind is needed in those situations. But there are certain situations in life where you do not want your mind to come in. When you're with your partner, when you're with your family, and you you don't want your mind to be there. You just want yourself. There's something when you remove your mind from yourself, there's still something in you which sort of connects with people. I think that is what he refers to a lot in his all his things, and he talks about emotions, every kind of emotion. I think he has helped me realize that my mind can stay where it's needed, but on the other side, you can just have the human experience of without judging someone, without judging yourself for that matter. Just pick up and do stuff, and then you will learn, and then you'll get on, and you'll get on to the next thing and the next thing and keep going.
Wow.
So
That's quite profound. You guys are about to now become my counselors, because the part about removing the mind from certain things, I personally felt that was one of my biggest challenges throughout the week. I think that's what Mukesh was kept alluding to with me. But that you remember at the end when he said, "You breaking you was my target for this week," and I was like, "What does that even mean?" I thought I was an open book and vulnerable, etc. But over the week, I got to know that actually I don't let go. I don't. It was interesting. I had a full. I don't know if I shared this with you, Roshana, but I had a full circle moment in that week. I had therapy on the Thursday, so day 4 of the session. It was with my supervisor, with my with my coaching supervisor. It was my last session with her, and I was telling her, "Do you remember last year we had a session about my coaching practice, about how I can navigate these difficult clients in a way that I can be a bit more playful with them and not be so strict about my therapy session, about my coaching sessions?" And she was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, pull up your notes. Let's have a look at it." Because in my head, I was saying to her, "Well, I'm doing this acting workshop, and I know that I'm still being very reserved and inhibited, and I want to be able to play, and I don't know how to do that." And that Thursday, I scrolled back through my notes. That session on play was exactly a year to that date. Exactly a year, same time, same person. It was the same location on MS Teams as well. And I thought I had to take a moment and pause because it just felt like the whole. I know Gushan loves a bit of this universe manifestation full circle moment. That this time last year, where was I? And this time here. And it just kind of feels like a little bit of the universe just giving you a little nod to say, it's okay, you're asking the right questions, keep going, you're doing the right thing. Um, and I share that because everything that you just said to me there about taking the mind out of it and being too conscious of other people. Do you guys think there is such a thing as being too socially intelligent?
what do you think, Guru?
Um, I don't think you can be very how do you define two? I don't think there's a limit to how socially intelligent you can be. You can probably be over socially intelligent, or like say probably more socially intelligent than others, but I don't think there's a limit, or like too socially intelligent. I'm not sure if that would be a negative thing or a blessing in disguise or something like that, but but I think you can be more socially intelligent than others.
Okay. How about yourself, Ashish?
Mm, I mean, it depends, right? Like being socially intelligent, if you include using that again and again in different situations, then does it take away you from being you, right?
Mm,
Um, and then it becomes a kind of a problem for you because, okay, there are certain situations I have to be this way, but then you're trying to be someone and not yourself. So it can take you a bit away. But then again, it's up to the personality, right? Some personalities that will work. For some, it won't. I think as humans, we are so complicated. with all the personalities and the upbringing and the conditioning we have, the people we have met in our lives, everything has had an impact on us. So essentially, we are right now the result of what has happened to us versus what we can learn from it and what we cannot learn from it, or just let go of. Letting go is also an important part of that. So I think it's it's so complicated that everyone has to find their own way. I think as again, I'll say something which Mukesh said in the class, right? Go figure it out, right? Right. And that is what it is, right? For some people it will work, some people it might not work. Some people will have the difficulty to choose which one is one for them. All these things will happen, but I think as long as you're doing it, you will know what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And then I think the question will come up at some point where you would have to take a stand that, oh, this is working for me, this is not working for me. And then you will eventually find you'll be in a place where you can be at peace.
I'm glad Ashish said that because he's going to be recruited into Muted Healing's coaching company soon enough, guys. Because especially with character strengths, anyone who's been listening to the podcast long enough knows that with character strengths, and I'll share this with Guru and Ashish because they're new to it, but you can overuse your strengths. And which sounds a bit oxymoronic because if they're strengths, then how can there be something bad about it? But too much of anything and too little of anything can obviously cause detriment. And often I do have clients where sometimes they're overusing things. For example, if a person's top strength is love, that doesn't necessarily mean that love is, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's in a healthy way. Because if their top strength is love and their lesser used strength is prudence or self-regulation, it might just mean that they're constantly giving away so much of themselves to other people that they have very little left for themselves. So that might be love for others, but not so much love for themselves. So there is an element there of being able to overuse your strengths. And we tried to work a way in which we could balance it, perhaps reduce some things and raise other things. What's this one? Social intelligence, I would say. For me personally, perhaps I had overused it and I still do. And because I think what happens there is I agree with Gulshan that I don't think you can have too much of it, but perhaps if you overuse it, you end up becoming overly conscious. And being overly conscious of what other people think of you takes you away from your authentic self. And then as Ashi said, you end up becoming somebody or performing somebody else that you're not, and kind of not not being able to strip away and be your authentic self. Guruji's like nodding along now, like he's in agreement. Or what's your thinkings? You're on mute, my friend.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I literally agree that, especially I relate to it so much, the fact that, you are not you become at one point a person that it's just not you anymore. And I see it for myself because um it's like not just me, but like it's like one of these surveys and like psychological tests show that I have that people pleaser attitude. So I tend to change myself a lot according to the situation, just so that, well, how's that other person thinking of me? And although you can say, yes, I am adjusting myself to the situation, it brings in the fact that am I am I this person? Is like when I go home, am I this person in my head? Or is this the new normal? So it becomes a very tricky situation at one point.
It's this
Yeah.
constant inner dialogue that you're having, inner monologue that you're having with yourself, like मैं कौन हूँ, कहाँ से आया हूँ? And it becomes like this big life existential crisis. But it's one of the reasons why I love what I do because I mean the company is called Muted Healing so that we can mute the noises that take us away from who we truly are. Only then will you create enough silence to work out who's in here and what does he want, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there was a point you referred to, right? Like, if somebody's strength is love and they keep giving the love to everyone else, they end up having none for yourself. And I can say it by experience because I'm pretty sure every mom is like that, but my mom um, is to an extent that I have to literally sit her down for hours and have a chat with her in a coffee shop to just make her realize that it's okay to just have some time for yourself. Go and you go to a parlor, just just have a day out with your friends. But she's not ever lived for herself. And so it used to be like my with my parents, with my when my parents got married, my father had like young brothers and sisters to take care of, so she has taken care of them. Then
Mm.
obviously me and my brother, and then my brother had triplets, so they had three kids at the time. So she was always in the grind, taking care of someone, and sharing her love with everyone else. In those years, she has I don't think she even remembers how she can love herself or make some time for herself in a day. um and it's no matter how much I have this time, because I have limited time with her, whenever I go back to India or she comes here, it's a very limited time. To sort of make her unlearn so many things in that time, it's just not possible. But yeah, it's always I always we always talk about these things so that she's there, that she's aware that okay, this is something I can do. Give her some confidence that you're not doing wrong. Because the other part which people feel when they over love others is like the guilty, like, oh, that, oh, if I don't do this, oh, am I being a bad person, on those lines. So yeah, I could totally relate to that point, and I can only think of my mom at that point when you said that.
And I think there's something there for sure about a cultural and gender element. And the majority of my pro bono clients I get are um, women of color. Uh, Even if I do have white women clients, it's often when they're married and have had children. And they often come because they're thinking, I don't know who I am anymore. I've lost that sense of identity, like me Conti before I was married. I had my own, and it sounds a bit sad, but and to an extent it is. But I think for our mom's generations, it was very much like you got married when you were 16. That was just
Exactly.
the done thing. You don't really have much choice. Nowadays, of course, there's choice, but then there's still a loss of identity because there's so much focus on अब किसी किसी के घर के बहू बन गई हो, you have to uphold that honor and uphold your husband's reputation and then your children's and so on. She's constantly living for somebody else. And one of the reasons I love one of the ways I love using strengths in organizations to help team building is we do this exercise called strength spotting. And now you guys have obviously got access to the strength survey. See in your personal and professional relationships, I wonder what their top strength would be. And we're here talking about social intelligence. I'd be curious to think about, are Desi women's social intelligence ranked a little bit higher than ours because they're constantly taught to think about shadi ke baad, don't do anything that will upset your sasural, your in-laws. Think about your brother-in-law and your sister-in-law, and don't forget to worry about what Chacha said and so on. There's this constant conditioning of be mindful of what other people are thinking of you. I don't
Hello.
really have it's not really a question, it's more of an observation. I
Yeah.
just wonder if social intelligence is much higher for them and probably a strength, but also a curse.
I think yes. I agree because Indian families, they tend to be like joint. You're living not only with your little family, but a woman's also living with their husband's brother's family as well. And Indian families, because or Indian or like Desi families in general, we're so close with our cousins. We know our third cousins, and like think of them as our brothers and sisters. Whereas when I first moved to the UK and I found out, oh yeah, oh that person, I think he might be my cousin, or I don't really know. So that was like one of my first cultural shocks in the UK. But yeah, coming back, like I'd say a married woman has to. I think that for me, from my personal experience, I'd say women in an Indian family are like the backbone. They're holding all the family relations together. They're observing each and every person in the family. They know what they want, how to
Mm.
keep them together, and who to keep away from the family as well, who
Yeah.
to like talk
True.
to less. So I think I agree. I think they have higher social intelligence for sure.
Mm. The amount of emotional burden that they take on, and the studies have been done on it about, the triple shift that a woman takes on, like paid work, childcare, emotional work of the family. She manages the organization of the entire family's calendars and birthdays and finances
Oh
and
yeah.
conflicts, and it's a systemic issue. I mean, it's interesting 3 men are sitting here talking about women's issues on a podcast, but an important one to make space for, and also an important one to recognize that strengths can change before marriage, after marriage, in a Desi family, in a white family,
Exactly.
and the dynamics of that just blows my mind every time.
Yeah, I think it's at some point you have to stop. Like I think people get sometimes very hard with the image of who they are. Like they will get very stubborn on like, oh, I am like this, I am like this. So before anyone else, they put themselves in certain kind of boxes. Um, so they sort of have to be open as well. Like, throughout the life, it's a long life. So you will change and you'll keep changing no matter what. I mean, what I was probably a week back before this class, uh, I've changed. I've picked up new things. I've seen new people. I've understood that life could be much more um, what I thought at, a week prior. So things will keep on changing based on your experiences and your interaction with people. So never box yourself. I think
Mm,
never have too strong opinions about yourself.
spot on. One of the things I took away from that workshop was someone asked the question about I struggle to remember lines. And he said it, and I thought, I know the answer to this. It is just learn them. There's literally no other option. You have to learn your lines. But it's a story I've told myself that I have a bad memory. And I keep saying that to myself, and I keep saying it to other people as well to justify my bad memory. And it's like, the more you keep saying it, bro, you're gonna keep believing it, and then your brain, the part of your brain that is responsible for remembering stuff is gonna start shutting down because it thinks, well, you have no hope in me, so what's the point?
Yeah, yeah.
You have to keep telling yourself these stories, and through strengths potentially. um Thank you both for your time. We're going to start coming up towards the end of the conversation now, and I just want to ask you guys maybe a couple more about your individual profiles. But in fact, here's a question for the three of us. When we're doing improv, one of the things that I think social intelligence could be useful for is, and I don't have the answer to this, I'm very curious what you think. One of the problems with improv is people end up talking over each other, and they obviously make a lot of noise, and the audience is like, who do I follow? Like, what is going on here? And obviously the problem with the activities that we did was that we were only given like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to rehearse and so on. So that's inevitable, it's going to happen. But moving forward, if the three of us were ever on stage together and we had to do an improv piece, how on earth would we learn to not talk over each other and to have some kind of social intelligence that gives us the cues as to when to speak and when not to speak? Feels like an obvious question, right? But who's got the answer?
I don't.
I think it. Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. I don't think there's an obvious answer to that. I think it's just you figure it out as you spend more time, right? Like right now on this call, we haven't spoken on top of each other, so it is still an improv call. We are talking about what we feel and everything. But I think it wouldn't happen that you got to plan things, especially when there is something which has a time constraint and we did not get time to speak about it. Um, there are some etiquettes to everything you do. If you follow them, then you will end up in a better situation.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, there's no guarantee that it won't happen. It might not happen once. It might happen the second time, and it will never happen again. It could go either way. But if you have a plan, like you have cues for each other, like and then it could definitely not happen.
mm. Gulji, you were saying.
It feels so weird hearing Guruji. Like no one calls me that. But I was gonna say is the chemistry that matters so much. Because when we did our improv exercise, I barely knew people's names, first of all. Uh, I think till this day, I still call Ash Ashutosh in my head.
But we did establish this. He looks more like an Ashutosh than he looks like
Yes.
an Ashish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why today I've just called him Ash. Just
Safe
accidentally.
option.
Yeah. Chemistry matters so much in my opinion, because like I said, it was what, day two, day three when we did that. And it was a time constraint again, as Ash mentioned. The time constraint. There was just so much happening in our head. We just and the fact you mentioned, we wanted our feedback. We wanted to impress Mukesh. We just wanted to do so much, and everything's just happening. So at that point, I mean, to be fair, we established the scenes quite well, so we were not really speaking on top of each other that much. But we noticed in other groups how there was just like two people fighting in one corner,
Corner.
someone fighting in one corner as well, someone arguing in one corner. Um, and I could see myself in their shoes as well, to be fair, because you just want to
Mm.
just do what you're doing. You don't care, and especially if it for someone like me who sort of dreads performing in front of people, which is weird given how much stand-up comedy I've done. Uh, so you're a totally different person. I'm saying for myself. Some people might disagree, but I'm a completely different person when I'm performing in front of someone else. Um, and it doesn't matter how much you practice beforehand. Oh yeah, we won't say this that. When you're out there, you're like, oh dang, this is my line. I think it's my time. I don't wanna mess this up. So you end up speaking on top of each other and blah blah blah. But as the days from the workshop, they continued. We got to know each other quite well. There was a little chemistry which was established between people, and although, like, let's say when we did another improv exercise with the humor, although people were speaking on top of each other, that was like one of the briefs, that just go out there and do whatever you want to
Do whatever.
do. They No one really cares. And
Mm.
there was just less pressure and better chemistry. And you could see there was a difference. And if people were made to do our sketch exercise again on maybe day 7, it would have been
Mm.
much better.
Mm. Based on both of your reflections, I think my personal challenge. So at the end of every episode, I try to set myself a challenge with regards to that particular strength. What I'm hearing is for context, I'm part of a show called Bollywood Odyssey, which is happening in July in West London. I haven't spoken to many people about it yet because I'm not sure if it's as it is going to be advertised, but there's still time. Anyways, long story short, I managed to get a bit of a role as a creative director for the immersive theatre part. And there's a lot of improvisation. Shobita, who was on our workshop, she's actually one of the actresses in that segment.
Oh,
So
wow. Nice.
I think what I'm going to need to do is think about social intelligence when it comes to my direction role. From our group activity, the immersive experience, sorry, the improv experience, as well as the short film, one of the things that I recognized was that the intentionality was different. Some people went in to impress the teacher. Some people wanted to, I just want the feedback so I can get better. And I think that started to become more prevalent throughout the week. And there were moments, I don't think they were ever personal, and I don't think it ever got to that experience where it could be a conflict. But I know certainly in other groups there was some conflicts, but I think having such a short time helped because you just think there's no point in conflicting. Let's just let that person get on with it. I don't agree with it, but it is what it is. Now that I have a bit of a directing role, I think that helps because it removes any confusion as to who has what say in what. Um, and I think social intelligence will be quite useful for me to exercise there by, and if you notice, I kind of said this throughout our short film as well. What comes naturally to you, do that. What comes easy to you,
Yeah.
what's your strength, do that. Rather than listen to me tell you, you should say this and you should do that. What do you feel right in this moment? And I think I want to be able to exercise more of that for each of my um, actors and the team. and then obviously tell them to ramp it up in terms of exaggeration level because it's a theater and it's meant to be cringe a little bit. Do you have any advice for me as a potential director to use social intelligence and how I would use that when I'm on in rehearsals and on stage?
Yeah, I would just say just go and do, and then we'll see how you do go about it. Like I
Go
don't
and do
think
it.
that's
We'll
it.
judge you
Yeah,
afterwards.
there's no judgment. I think you will, because you already have certain things sorted within you. I think it'll just come out naturally. You can try again, like when you try to pick advices and try to implement it, that's you not you're just picking up bits from other people and trying to implement it. um I'm not sure whether that will work. I don't know how big this your assignment is or whatever you're doing right now, how big it is. So you might not have that time. You just have to, if that becomes your strong point and then you exercise it, I think it makes sense. But just to
Mm,
pick up something new and try to experiment when you're doing something as a creative director, then it might not work.
that's fair.
So yeah, so just
That's fair.
stick to your strengths right now.
I agree. Big promoter of that. I always say, and I've always said from the beginning of this, do the best that you can with the resources that you have. If you constantly wait for the perfect, you're going to be waiting for forever, and you'll never get anything done. Um, a question to you both then, just to finish off. Is there anything on your profiles? It doesn't have to be social intelligence, but if you wanted to go down the social intelligence route, how might you be using that differently over the next 2 months or so for your acting careers? Alternatively, if you think that's a little bit difficult, your second question is there a strength on your profile that you think you would like to explore more because you're interested? How do I use more of this? How do I use less of this? Where might this help me in?
I'm looking at my strengths. Hang on.
Take your time. I love these silences when it's the best part of any coaching session when a person's like, hmm.
I think for me, I would love to explore more of my lesser strengths, as it says in the survey results,
Mm-hmm.
which is appreciation of beauty and excellence, self-regulation, prudence, and perspective. Um,
Interesting.
I would have thought personally that perspective would probably be in the middle for me and not a lesser strength. Uh, but I think that's something I would want to explore more. And social intelligence would come in really handy for me uh, in 2 weeks' time when I'm traveling to America and just getting used to the new culture, new people around me. And my first time traveling alone to a country that's not India. Uh,
That's
so it's
exciting.
so it's it'll be hopefully it's not going to be too much of an overload because last time I had an emotional overload was at the end of the workshop and tears were rolling out of my eyes and I was like, what is happening? So
Oh,
um I'd say it's nice. Oh my God, it works so well. The fact that we're talking about social intelligence, um, it would inspire me to explore more into this over the next 10 days, 14 days now. And yeah, it's nice to just talk about it and know that this is something which I could benefit from.
Are you listening to this, dear listeners? A straight brown male who listens to Taylor Swift and is not shy to get emotional. Green flag alert.
alert.
I love that.
Um,
Thanks for sharing that, Gulshan, because I think it's really, I'm glad it's piqued your curiosity, and I'll be curious to know. Obviously, we've got each other's numbers. Do keep in touch. I want to know how you get on in America, and generally, I just want to know how you, if ever you have a question about, hey, you know what, I exercised my appreciation of beauty and excellence today. Haha, look at what I did, and so on. I'd love to know. Just keep in touch, yeah.
Of course, we've got the Cool Kids Club
Cool
going.
Kids Club going.
No,
So
stop. That's three C's, everyone. Three C's. What about you, Ashish?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my lesser strength, and one of them is humor. So maybe I need to just keep in touch with Gurshan a bit more.
Sometimes actually that does help. So, pairings where one top strength and one lesser use strength, for example, get together, it can help kind of harness some of that. Why is that
Yeah.
important to you?
I think with the experiences I've had in life in last decade or so, I think I because when I see this survey and I'm looking at humor, which is on the 22nd, so it's very on the end side. I think I need a bit more of humor in my life. I can sense that, and since I think it was the day when we did the comedy in the
Mm.
class, right? That day literally opened it up for me because we had no clue what we were going to do. I was told to become a tree, and I was like, how and what
Oh my gosh, I
should
remember it now.
what should I do? I was like, but then and at that point, I just let it go. I was like, don't think about, the thing I was talking about, like, don't think about what you want to do. It's just do whatever you feel natural in that time, just do. And I was literally reacting to people running around me, jumping on me, and all that. I was like, that is all you can do, but just try to be funny. So yeah, I mean, I would love to have a bit more of that in my life. I think it was just that was one day which changed a lot of things in my life in terms of like, oh, you can be funny or you can have a good time. Um,
Mm.
and so that bit I want to introduce a bit more. And in terms of social intelligence, I think it's going to be put to test for sure because I mean, professionally, I'm working, so I will explore because there's always new people who are joining our company, leaving, and it's like every month there's some new people I'm going to meet. So one is that, but the more important thing on a personal side is my girlfriend's parents are visiting us for first time from India, um, and just to now, because we have spoken about it, this will be in the back of my mind where I would try to see every situation, whatever we're doing, because I've never met them. So this is the first time I'll be meeting them and they'll be
Oh, that's
staying.
exciting.
Yeah, so they'll be staying with us. So yeah, I don't know what will happen, but I think there is a bit of social intelligence which I need to adhere to, and I need to keep in mind while I'm interacting with them. And then their friends are going to come over at some point, so we're going to take them around. We're going to be in Wales, Gurushan,
Oh,
at some
nice.
point in
If you need
August.
any
Yeah,
recommendations, let me know.
I will. I will. It's on my list. Yeah, but it's in August, so it's still some time. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting time.
I love that. And I love that you both got some specific scenarios where you can exercise them. And I think, again, I love to hear updates and whatnot. Both the episodes of humor and appreciation of beauty and excellence are out as well. See if there's anything interesting in there. My listeners know I'm the biggest hypocrite ever. I don't actually listen to podcasts, but I will sit and talk for hours on them for myself. But yeah, they're both out, and just see if there's anything in there that might be quite useful for you guys. With humor, I think it's definitely a lot about letting go and just because I'm not a particularly funny. When he said to think of three
Three
jokes,
jokes, yeah.
I love those kind of jokes. I actually, if I was to strip it, and he said he put all the censorship in there. He said nothing sex related, nothing race related, nothing offensive, no swear words. It's got to be suitable for a primary school. Those are actually my favorite kind of jokes. In Britain, we call them dad jokes.
Not
But
jokes.
I couldn't think of one. I couldn't even think of one. And I think that
Yeah,
there's something quite telling there.
exactly.
It's a state of being perhaps rather than doing, unless of course you're a stand-up comedian. But anyways, a huge thank you to you both for giving me your time, for giving this podcast your time, and our dear listeners. I hope you guys have managed to get something away from this session as well. And for all of our dear listeners, social intelligence, as we know, can be great to have as a tool in your arsenal. Just be mindful that you don't sell yourself short by being too socially intelligent or overly conscious of all times. Gulshan and Ash's details will be in the caption as well, so do feel free to check out their work on their socials, whatever it is that they share, and connect with them to find out a little bit more about what they do. So until next time, while we'll be here for teamwork, I bid you goodbye.
All right. Take care of yourself. Thanks
Take
for having
care.
us.